my fellow freelancers. Happy Wednesday, and thank you so much for joining me and James on Slice of Advice. This is, a resurgence of the Slice of Advice, and I'm really excited that it is coming back to you guys. Now, if you are unfamiliar with the Slice of Advice, this is my Instagram live series that I was doing way back when in 2021, but it has come back now for its grand entrance back in. And I'm really, really excited to have you here. Each week I'm going to be, or each fortnight, or every 2 weeks for those who are interested, I'm going to be speaking to a different creative freelancer who's doing things their own way and finding their own flavor of success. I personally love having these conversations because it brings a more community feel to something that can be really isolating, really just freelancing can be lonely. So let's all come to the table and share our experiences so that we can learn from each other. Okay, so Barnard, my good friend James, he and I just recently were at the Designer Boss Summit, and we were both presenters in this incredible experience. And I thought, you know what? This guy, one, he knows his shit when it comes to TikTok and editing stuff. He's just incredible, but also he does this thing. And if you're not familiar with James, I'm really surprised, but two, he does this thing where I feel like I get lost in all of his content because it's just done in such a way that is really like you're sitting next to him and being taught everything he knows. So I am going to invite him. Just thank you so much for being here. And second, I really hope that you, if you're not already following me here, I'd love you to join me in your pricing queen. But without further ado, he's here.
You made it.
All
You
right.
made it. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Good. I'm extremely tired. You're getting the rundown, knackered version of me today. I do apologize. I was up late last night because you can't schedule paid posts on TikTok, and I had to wait until 11 p.m., which was the release of Adobe Illustrator's new beta version, to post my video about it. Then I had to stay awake answering comments. And then my son woke up at 3 a.m. in the morning and decided to start the day at 3 a.m. this morning. So you're getting the tired version of me today. And my apologies.
No apologies needed. You're here. You show up. Great. And I've already actually seen some of the stuff that you've been posting about the new beta in Adobe. They brought out Beta Express today as well. So it's been a busy day for Adobe.
Just throwing fistfuls of cash at all their new products lately. It's just nuts. They've released obviously generative fill in Photoshop. Beta Express now has all of the Adobe Firefly and native AI stuff in there. Illustrator had two new features yesterday. One was a AI coloring mechanism, so you can recolor your artwork with prompts, and the other one was font recognition, so you can now unoutline type in Illustrator back to live text again using their AI tools. It's wicked, proper time-saving stuff.
Yeah, and I love anything that really does look at the way, like any software company that does look at the way it's actually used and suggesting what they think is going to be perfect for us, and kind of goes, well, what are some common problems and common situations and common frustrations that we as freelancers and creatives come across? And one of them, definitely, I've been caught out more than once with converting text to outlines, and then they come back for a business card a year later and you're like, I got no idea. It's probably, let's be honest, it's probably Poppins.
Happens all the time in logo design. You're exactly right. When they come back to you for a tweak, or let's say they open up a new location and you have to dig out that source file from a hard drive that you used 2 years ago. Obviously, I'm backing stuff up, but it's like you always have to dig a little bit for it. It's nice to be able to take the the EPS or the SVG and go boop, live text, re-export. It's too easy. So now that problem has been solved for us. It's wicked.
Someone who, when they send through a logo that's just not quite right or not quite good enough, you'll like search in Google and go .pdf and then try and download. You know what? I'm a genius.
You feel like the Neo from the Matrix, don't you?
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me on today's Slice of Advice. And as you so eloquently put on your stories, I am apparently going to be grilling you, which really, really suits me quite nicely because I'm not sure if the viewers know, I'm actually the daughter of a butcher. I worked in a butcher shop for 14 years
Right.
and I was a butcher alongside my dad for most of my teens. So
Right.
grilling, it's my homeostasis. It's great.
Well, being a Brit living in Australia, I found I've had to learn about grilling quite quickly with the amount of barbecue uses that I've had over here. In fact, I had some friends over last weekend, and I was doing the sausages on the barbecue, and he was watching very closely at my sausage grilling technique. So I was under a lot of pressure. Yeah, it's something that I wasn't expecting when I moved to Australia.
Look,
I was going to be judged on my grilling.
there's not many things us Aussies are serious about, but this is one of them.
Definitely, definitely.
Excellent. So, for those who don't know and who have been living under a rock, can you give me a quick synopsis? Is you and Barnard Co.
Yeah, so I am a freelance logo designer. I operate out of the Gold Coast, Australia. I am from the UK, but I moved here a little over 2 years ago now. So I've worked across the publishing industry in London. That's where I got my start in graphic design. Worked my way up to sort of senior design roles until I basically ended up as a sort of head of digital design at a national newspaper, and absolutely hated it. One of those roles where it was kind of firefighting, dealing with HR issues, client problems. So I went freelance to pay the bills while I found a new role, and then discovered that I enjoyed the freelance life way more than the permanent roles. Just being able to take naps in the middle of the day, go run an errand whenever I want, spend more time with the kids. It's it's a fantastic lifestyle. I don't think I could ever go back to a full-time permanent role now. It's this or nothing.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same. I spent years in different design studios, in-house, like in like the likes of Officeworks and Rolex and
Hmm.
a few like other places where I was the in-house designer, but also as part of studios. And whether it was one or the other, like I don't think I could go back to either because I have so much joy and pride over what I create for my clients. But one thing that I think you will probably agree with me here is the one thing that I most treasure is the conversations I get to have with my clients and
Hmm.
the actually problems from the client's
Yeah,
mouth and
yeah,
being able to properly rather than it being filtered through like account service and then an
yeah,
art director.
yeah.
You're like, it's Chinese whispers now. Who actually wants this thing?
Well, there's two reasons why that's important. Your first reason is amazing because you're dealing directly with the client. You're tackling their problems, solving their problems as a graphic designer. That's hugely empowering. It's a rewarding thing to do. The second reason is you get paid more because there's no middleman. So if they're coming directly to you, they're spending their full budget directly with a freelancer. So that's always a bonus.
I feel like there's also when you know the person who's doing the thing, there's a different. Won't say it's a new level of trust, but it's a different kind of trust
Hmm.
because it's not becoming that like hierarchy of yelling of just like the person yelling down to the person yelling down to the junior
Yeah.
who's they're going, I don't know what I'm doing. It's actually like having a conversation with the person who's invested and interested in making your business grow and vice versa.
Definitely. And they're coming to you as well as a freelancer. So you're already in their minds, an expert and somebody that they want to work with. So there's less kind of conflict there, and it's a much easier process, I feel.
Yeah. So I generally, with Slice of Advice in the past, have structured it over a couple of questions, and you got them
Mhm.
beforehand. But I do tend to riff because I am lovingly blessed with the ADHD brain that I've and made all sparkly and probably painted it teal. Let's be honest
Yeah.
here. So first question was, how do you prefer to price? And I'm talking about generally like across the board your business, and
Mhm.
why do you prefer to price that way?
Okay, so I'm probably 7, 8 years as a freelancer right now, and I've toyed with all sorts of different ways of doing it. I've obviously done hourly pricing, I've done project-based pricing. Um, right now, I do a tiered-based structure on my website. So there's 3 packages that you can access my logo design services with. It's called Startup, Professional, and Deluxe. Okay, so Startup is basically a logo and a style guide. Okay, you get a logo, you get logo exports, and you get a style guide kind of thrown in as a bonus because I feel like every client should have one. Things like your hex colors for your color codes for your brand, your fonts that you should pair with it, and how to treat the logo in inverted options. So when to use one on the dark background, when to use one on the light background, and a little bit about safe space and how to calculate the safe space around the logo. And I feel like every client should get at least that document with their product. It just allows them to kind of not destroy the brand guidelines the second they get their logo. This happens all the time. When a client gets a new logo, they put it into their Instagram profile, blown up, touching the edges of the circle,
Or it
and
can't.
immediately,
They've got.
yeah, right, and it's just destroyed it. The instant they've launched their new logo, just wrecked it. So I always do that. So that's the starter package. The professional is a bit more. So I kind of like upsell services based off of that one core offering, which is how I kind of get my clients. Then I upsell things like more rounds of amends if they feel like they've got a bit of a trickier product that might need that has more stakeholders and more people involved. Typically tends to lengthen the sign-off process. A more detailed brand guidelines document, so maybe like a 10-page plus document that goes into way more detail about how to treat the logo. And then things like stationery, business cards, letterheads. And then up from there, you're getting like the sort of the kitchen sink stuff with the deluxe package. And that's like animating the logo. Do you need a website? Do you need a pitch deck? Do you need all the different elements that you can kind of upsell on top of building that logo as the first sort of starting point from the brand? And that can also be like background patterns and assets for your website, original typography. So if they want to do something that's really customized, then maybe they even need a font creating from the new type that their logo is now based around. I think up with that. So that gets stuff up there, though. That's the deluxe package.
Yeah, I like that. Would you say that this is more of a productized service approach, or do you tend to, like, say, for instance, you have two completely different clients come to you for the mid-level package, the professional package. Are they generally priced the same, or do you alter based on the kind of client that they are?
I alter it. And like, I'm sure we can get into the weeds on this, but I have a floor price. Okay, so I have a rate that I won't go lower than because it's not profitable for me to do so. I might do it if it was like a charity or on a non-profit, or I'm working with a friend or a co-worker, someone who I'm willing to discount a little bit for. But yeah, I have a rate, which basically, if I don't charge that rate, I'm not making money because of my process and how long it takes me. I probably put a bit more time and effort than a lot of people do into this. It takes me 2 weeks to turn around the first concept for a client to choose from, and I put that in as a kind of my creative process. There's like lots of breaks, coming back to it the next day, sleeping on designs, coming back to it, or maybe even a week later, so that I'm really, when I come back to it fresh and I look at it, I'm like, wow, I'm proud of that. I'm willing to send that on to the client. So it takes, I've got a process. It's a bit lengthy. I build that into the floor price so that I don't undersell my services. And then anything up from there is kind of based on who the client is and what they do. So it's a bit of what's the word? It's a little bit random, but it kind of depends on the client and the return on investment of what that logo will do for their business.
Yeah, it's going to be slightly off topic for what I've said, but like I feel like that approach, it's not as random when you really look at it and kind of go, well, if you're bringing a different kind of value to a client, then yeah, it probably should be charged a little bit differently. But also, I think that value is really different, and it's not always monetary.
Yeah.
I personally
Yeah.
paid a little while ago for a co-working space, and I charged it a lot lower than what I usually would, because when we had this really frank conversation at the start, she was like, this is how much we've got to spend. And I then tailored the design, but I also knew that that relationship was going to result in future opportunities that I couldn't buy.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Not every client is the same, and you're absolutely right that if that job is going to lead to work, and you've got to be sure of that beforehand, then yeah, why not discount it that first time? And I have a little line that I write sometimes in my email saying, I'm willing to bring the budget down on this project if in the future that we work again on another project, I will be charging at my normal rate. And that kind of allows me to feel better about discounting that one job. And just so that if they refer me, or if we do work on another project together with a different product or a different company, then they know where my rate is at, and that's where I'll sort of be billing. But yeah, it's tricky. You kind of have to like play it a little bit by ear and do your research on the client when they come in, so you know a bit more about them and what they can, you think they can afford.
Yeah, like you kind of end up looking at them as almost like, okay, you're dating my best friend. Let's do a little bit of a store.
Yeah, yeah. Like,
And
go on company's house, find out their annual turnover.
important to understand, you know, I put up a post today which was like, what is the best piece of pricing advice you've ever been given? And mine was, you don't solve expensive problems with cheap prices. Like, you can't be guaranteed to solve this really expensive problem that's costing them money
Mhm.
with a real price. And a lot of the time we kind of sit there and go, oh well, I need to charge low because then they'll say yes, but that actually might end up meaning that they say no.
Right, yeah, true. It's difficult with logo design though, because it's hard to put a value on what a good logo does for a business. So Chris Do talks about this in a few of his posts. It's like typically, like, how much, if you think a logo could make you this much in a year, would putting 10% of that aside to create that logo be a good investment? And that's often quite a good sort of starting point. Take your yearly turnover, divide it by 10, put that, and think about that when you're doing your branding packages, because that's the kind of value that, you know, a trustworthy logo will bring to your business, especially when your business is in a massively competitive space. And I always use the hairdresser example for this. Like, you go on Google and you Google hairdressers in your area, there's 20 within a mile radius of my house, and like, how, and you're trusting them to cut your hair, which is a big deal for me anyway. You know, you want to go with somewhere that looks like they've done this before, and a good logo can do that. So it's all about the value of a nice, stylish, and trustworthy looking brand that will bring customers and just sort of, you know, up the trust level slightly.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're someone who specializes in logos and you know, logos and brand, because I feel like it's really important to understand that they can get mixed up sometimes. Maybe I'm
Yeah,
not someone who comes near logos anymore because I did not find the joy in them. And we all kind of have our different flavors. I much prefer to take a logo and build the brand out of it. But I I then look to people like yourself, like Made by James, like people who really do have this special thing when it comes to crafting a logo and bringing it all together. So how do you handle when clients say, "Oh, I just want a logo"?
well, actually, that's one of the reasons I kind of target the logo first, is because it's almost like a more SEO friendly term. It allows me to attract clients looking for that specific thing. And if you say to people, "Yeah, I'm a branding designer," what do you mean by that? Do you do patterns, assets? Do you do tone of voice? If you say I'm a logo designer, they know instantly what you do. And it's
Mm,
kind of like I build off of the logo first as the kind of, you know, main niche, and then I can totally expand on all of the areas of branding because of my past experience in graphic design. But I found that going, I'm a logo designer, is like a massively like SEO friendly thing. Like, people search for that, or, you know, they know exactly, you know, that they want to go to you as that specialist in that area. And I also like the logo
we,
design side of things.
well, we
Sorry.
love that this is something we have to consider now, like how SEO
Yeah.
friendly are our titles. You know,
Yeah.
that's why pricing queen has always been something that I've lent on, because it's like, well, it tells me like enough to understand, but enough to also be curious as
Yeah.
well.
Definitely. Definitely. It's like, it's just such an easy way for people. Like, if you're going to niche into something, that is the logo design. It's like the start point of a brand. It's the perfect place to start for most people. It's also, for me, it's like pure creation. You're creating something completely from scratch. You literally start with a blank white page and then build on that out of ideas that you've got from the client. And I love that side of things. It's one of the reasons I niched into this area, is because it's the most rewarding part for me.
Mm.
And like I said before, though, you can build on top of that to upsell and expand on those services and offer more and charge more, which is great.
It's like someone being specialized in just like the concrete pour of the house, but they're also able to build the
Yeah,
house because you're the concrete pour.
yeah. I'm a
You,
foundations guy, but yeah, I can build on top of those foundations if you want. Yeah, definitely.
yeah, I love that. Cool. So, well, what has been the best lesson you've learned when it's come to pricing your creativity or pricing what you do?
Don't put your prices on your website. That's the
Yeah.
main lesson that I have learned from this process. So about 2 years ago, I was getting really fed up with people coming to me and saying, "Can you do a logo for free? Can you do a logo for $100? and just kind of chancing, just testing the waters to see if I could do it. I was getting loads of requests like that. It's kind of annoying. I was, feeling a little bit insulted that someone with my level of experience was being offered that. And, it sounds big-headed, but I put prices on my website as like a floor price to kind of weed that out because I was getting so sick of all the admin. And so I put a floor price on the startup package only, and then left the other two as like an inquire for price. But it was like the base level to say, look, if you haven't got this amount, then probably, it's probably not worth getting in touch. That's exactly what happened. No one got in touch for 2 months. I had one lead in 2 months come through, and I almost killed my business because of the lack of leads that came from that. It was basically people came to the site, saw that price, went, that's too expensive, and without the opportunity for me to discuss that with them and maybe guide them through why they should spend a bit more on a logo, it was just a hard bounce, and they went off to a competitor. So as the kind of fallout of that happened, I halved the price on the floor price to try and get people to come in, and then eventually took them off altogether, and the leads started to come back in again. So yeah, it was an absolute disaster from a lead gen perspective. The floor price on the site for a logo design, it was just just did not work. So yeah, that would be my advice. Don't do that.
I actually got an article I wrote a little while ago on like, should my pricing be public, on my blog? And yeah, it was a little bit of one that I probably refer to the most in my business, of just going like, people saying, does anyone know if you should do your pricing public? And I'm like, here's my blog, have a conversation about it. It becomes a conversation piece. And I think we as designers really need to be careful of treading that line, or balancing the need to be easy to work with and simple to hire, but also can't make it so it's too easy. Almost like they still need to do a bit of the work. Now, I did see a question come through. Should we still do a pricing guide after a conversation? Please to jump in.
Okay, so when people contact me through my website, I have a kind of a funnel set up, and it's like a questionnaire which leads into a CRM, which I then use to respond. And the first question I ask is, what is your budget range? So $0 to $1,000, $1,000 to $5,000, $5,000 to 10, and 10,000 plus, and that immediately tells me at the level that they're playing at. Now, if a client comes through and says my budget is $0 to 1,000, I'll send them an email saying, look, I appreciate you sending me your details over. Unfortunately, this is the level that is the starting package. Like I gave away, it's more than 1,000, right? So yeah, it basically says, okay, this is where we want to start at. Can you stretch to that at all? And then we have a discussion around that. All those other funnels, if it comes through above, I then don't talk about pricing just yet, because I know they've got the budget to play with. We can then have a discussion about maybe squeezing a bit more out of them, or basically finding out the number of deliverables that they're going to need and then price around those. So I found that by asking the questions straight away in a kind of like a sales funnel, like a questionnaire form on my website, it kind of solves that problem instantly.
I like that. And I feel like it's working out the way that your target market or your customers and clients generally interact, but also where you want to position yourself. Like I see a lot of designers that will position themselves really specifically, and then are quite upfront with their prices, but it's because the problem they're solving is really specific and really niche. Whereas if you generalist and then also charge cheap pricing and also say you're going to be really fast, you will burn out, you will cry, and you will be of the design world 100%. 100%.
Definitely.
Yeah.
My sort of offering is quite lucky because it is quite standardized in a sense. So there's a process to it, and I can price that process pretty easily. And then with things like extra deliverables, it's about how long realistically that's going to take me or my assistant to help put those together. So it's kind of like once I know it, I can just pull down a list of bits and pieces to add to the budget and price it from there. So it's quite simple.
Nice. I really like one of the things that you've been doing about showing the process behind hiring someone as well lately. Just wanted to throw that out there because it's like seeing you have an assistant. I'm really bad as a boss because I want everyone to me, and that's not really great.
Mhm.
So I do hope that my copywriter and my video editor tell me that I'm wrong there, but they're not hired by me. They're separate contractors. They have their
Yeah.
own business. I'm grateful for giving them work to be able to put food on the table. But I've
Mhm.
really enjoyed the process behind that. So
Yeah. She's been amazing. Her name's Beatrice. She lives in Germany, and she is actually one of my Instagram subscribers. Okay, she was. I don't have many Instagram subscribers. I have this weird thing where I set it up and didn't really know what to do with it. And what I've ended up doing is giving them access to the logo design jobs that I can't work on right now. So if a client comes in and they've got a smaller budget, I'll give it to those guys, and maybe someone can pick it up, and maybe a junior designer or someone with a little less experience can take it, but I'll still be on hand to answer their questions and guide them through the process. That's kind of cool. Beatrice is one of my Instagram subscribers, and she messaged me after that video, and we just had a Zoom call chat, and turns out she's fantastic. Like, it's been such a nice process. Like, I was really struggling with handing off control, and I was doing all of the client presentations myself, putting all of the client style guides together myself, exporting all logo files and everything. All of that kind of work that's not maybe the best use of my time, she now takes on for me, and it's just been glorious, absolutely glorious. So I think we're week 3 or 4 now, and yeah, she's been absolutely fantastic. So I can't recommend that enough. If you're approaching burnout, maybe consider hiring someone to help out.
Nice. I like that. That's awesome. So when it comes to your projects that you've done over the years, what's one that has stuck out for you, not because it was necessarily your favorite, but because you learnt the most?
This electric E logo here. Let me get you the actual. Okay, so this one. This was a rejected logo from a client that didn't like it very much, and I ended up that client unfortunately ended up basically canceling the job with me midway through the process. It was quite early on in my niched down freelance logo design career, okay, and I hadn't quite nailed my briefing form. I hadn't quite nailed the process yet. We went through 5 rounds of amends. This was one of them, and they just didn't like any of them. And they ended up basically saying, okay, they've foregoed a pretty significant deposit in order to work with someone else, and it's quite a sort of crushing moment for me. And I went back to the drawing board with my briefing process, rewrote the whole thing, changed the questions, and basically, tried to extrapolate more from the client before starting the process. And that was really valuable. This logo that got rejected ended up being published in a book called The Logo Lounge. And yeah, and ended up using it on the outside cover of the book. So it's like semi-award winning. Somebody ended up asking if they could use it. I kind of farmed it out to people to see if anybody wanted it, and it ended up being used for an electrician in the south of England called Engage Electrical. The perfect logo for a lightning bolt E. Yeah, so it was absolutely fantastic project. Yeah, so a logo that I'm proud of. Didn't work for one client, worked for another client, and yeah, just a hugely rewarding story behind it. So that's why I've got it in neon behind me. It's like a constant reminder of that time.
From the ashes. Like
Yeah,
it's if you were to look at it on paper, it was a failed logo thing, but it's such a success, like that you
yeah,
literally flipped it completely.
that's it. And it's also it was a good sort of, what's the word? Like, I have a line in my terms of service that basically says any unused concepts or ideas, sketches, or mock-ups that aren't used by you remain mine, which means that I can then reuse those for other clients. And that's helped me out massively in other projects where there's been like a rejected design, and I've ended up using it for someone like my wife, for instance. She started her consultancy company using one of my rejected designs, which turned out to be perfect for her, and I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not had that line in my terms of service. So yeah, that was another valuable lesson learned there.
Yeah, I feel like my terms of service are the badges I've earned along the way
Yeah,
because
yeah, definitely.
been they're the things that I've learned along the way that did or didn't work that now needs to be put in concrete and put in writing. Because cancellation fees or things that scope creep, terms of blowing out, ownership as well. I've got
Hmm.
a client that is looking at doing a really big project with me, but they're doing it on a payment plan. And so I'm, currently revamping like a really specific payment plan terms of service
Hmm.
around so that I can make sure that, by the end of that 2 years of that job paid, it's not going to bite me in the butt.
Yeah,
So I feel like, you know, when you are a freelancer, whether you are on day one, day 101, or day 1001, or many more, you're still going to be learning the things that do and don't work.
definitely. There's also loads of really good free resources on there. I got mine. Mine is like an amalgamation of stuff by James Martin, a guy called the Logo Smith. He offers loads of free resources on this. And then, like you say, your experiences along the way. And one of the lines in there is to do with no non-contact. So if a client doesn't just completely unresponsive for more than 30 days, I get to cancel that job and keep their deposit. So it's like, because that's happened to me before, where a client's just ghosted me for no reason. And I'm sitting on their job waiting, and other clients getting pushed back, and they're just not responding, and they've just gone. So it happens more than you think. It's really strange. So yeah, if you go to barnard.co/terms, you can just copy mine and change the names. Totally fine.
Fair. I've actually got so I had Found Legal jump into my last group coaching program, not the one just recently, but one earlier. And they ended up going through like all of the things that you would have in your terms of service. And I've used them for my trademarking, I've used them for my contracts, I've used them for pretty much everything. And so they're going to be doing it for me as well. So I'm
Great.
excited about that.
Great.
If you could go back to a younger James and give him some advice about pricing or creative business, what piece of advice would you give other than the wonderful advice that you gave earlier?
Listing your prices. Yeah, don't do that. I guess it would be to switch to project-based pricing sooner. I mean, it's kind of difficult because in the initial stages, I was doing work that totally needed hourly pricing. So if you're doing retainer work on loads and loads of little things like digital banners and flyers and email newsletters and all that jazz, just pricing those individually is too much of a pain in the ass. So you kind of make sense to do it hourly there, or even just kind of on a retainer and sort of chip away at an 8-hour block of work, and price it that way. But yeah, going project based is it's just such a no-brainer, isn't it? Like there are only so many hours in the day. If you work all of those hours, your working limit is capped. And also, as you get faster as the designer and more experienced, you go quicker, and then you're getting penalized for working faster by working on an hourly rate. So yeah, I guess the project-based pricing was just like a huge little clip in my mind where I was just like, this is why have I not been doing this for years? This has totally allowed me to earn more for the same amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, if anyone is curious about retainer and how to set up retainers, how to price retainers, I actually have a free mini guide on my website. So if you want that, jump into my DM straight after this, and I will send you the link. It is probably one of my more popular free mini guides. I've got one on ramen profitability, one on licensing pricing, and one on creative retainers. And I've got a whole bunch coming in the next couple of months as well. And like switching to retainer models just last year. I started introducing retainers in January, and by December I was at $99,000 in retainers through clients for the
Bloody
year.
hell.
Like,
Amazing.
yeah, crazy. I actually think that it was probably one of the best moves I made last year was to introduce retainers for clients that needed it.
Hmm.
They didn't need the time, they needed the access to the genius. And I feel like that
Right, yeah.
which is well.
And do you have levels of like access built into that? So if you need a rush job, it goes up a little bit, or
Yeah,
how did that work?
yeah. The way I sell it is that I have an inflated hourly rate when I quote, just so
Hmm.
that then I do a little bit of a buffer. And so I will say, if you want like unlimited hours per month, I'm going to be doing it at my full rate because we can't control that.
Yeah,
But then the more that you purchase, so say for instance, it's $200 and you aren't on a retainer. If it's 10 hours a month, it's $180 an hour, and then each hour is extra at
right.
that, and then goes all the way down.
Smart.
30 or 40 hours is $150 an hour, but it's paid in full
Hmm.
at the start. And need to bulk that up, or need to top that up, or need to like push things across to the next month, or borrow some from the
Yeah,
future. It just means that you are
bit of
working with
flexibility.
not necessarily working for them, but with them to actually
Yeah,
solve the problem, best interests at heart. It's just really kind of communicated a little bit differently
hmm
for them as well. But
that's
yeah,
really good. Jamie Brindle talks about that in his posts about if you're struggling to find clients, the best place to find clients is your previous clients, and selling services back to them. And the retainer model is a classic way to do that. So yeah, it's rather than sort of digging out and doing, excuse me, sort of, cold calling and trying to find clients that way, go back to the people that are in your address book, and you'd be surprised about what you can offer them. As your skills progress, you can offer them more.
and you've
So yeah, you can sort of,
completely different problems that they didn't have back then.
yeah,
Like you've now
absolutely.
skills that is valuable in a different way. And fun fact, it is 7 times more expensive to get a new client than it is to get an old client back in. Like it's going to take you 7 times more effort, energy, cost, all that to get someone new. And then you're going to be doing the whole song and dance of like, I'm great,
Yeah,
so you should have. And
yeah.
you do that
Sign on the
with,
dotted line.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing. That's it. That's really interesting. I never heard that stat before. 7 times for a CPA as a designer. That's a huge amount.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, when we get into the whole psychology of buying processes, and I remember way back when at an AG Ideas conference and watching Agnat Enger talk about the buying um, cycles of men and women, but also like touch points. And, back then it was like 6 to 8 touch points to convert. And I just had a client last year who they did a lot of market research and it was 23 touch points to convert from viewer to purchaser.
Wow.
And any of those are out of whack or off brand, the whole cycle starts again. So it's
Wow.
really those kind of pieces of information that you need to have in your back pocket when you're trying to prove why you're worth hiring as
Mm,
well. I say I don't ever feel like we need to try and convince or prove ourselves. We just need to give them the opportunity.
yeah, definitely. I mean, it's difficult, like as a freelancer, to have that many touch points out there. Like we have social media, which is like a huge thing for me. And by putting myself out there as a kind of an expert in the industry, that's like when they finally do come to your website, that's more of like having that social proof almost. It's like a bit of a selling point for me. But yeah, that's insane that someone has like 20 points to get through. That's nuts. Good for designers though, because if they all need to be on brand, you need a good logo designer and brand identity person to help with that. So
Yeah.
all comes back to great design, doesn't it?
Yeah, and sometimes it's not the skills, it's actually the understanding and the know-how. So if there was anyone who was sitting there going like, I'm not a skilled designer, you don't necessarily have to, like, you can update and upgrade in your own skills and get better at logo design, but also get better at understanding the problem that you're
Hmm.
dealing with, the problem solving,
Definitely.
and what can you bring to the table that isn't skills, like information, experience, understanding, like those kind
Yeah.
of non-design skills, I actually feel like are almost, if not as important or more important than the actual skills of the designer as well.
Yeah, sure. Especially with logo design, you have to have an understanding about marketing a little bit. And I try and read up as much as I can on those kind of topics that are outside of the graphic design space, but are more about building a story behind a brand. Like I'm reading the book Story Brand right now. And another book's about selling, Built to Sell. That's another great one. Just, learning a bit about where your design sits within the sales funnel of that client is actually hugely powerful. And like you say, just adds like strings to your bow, which makes it an easier sell for your clients.
Mm. One of the ones that I've found really interesting recently is I came across a brand that I was working with that they gave me their logo and they wanted all of their work to be compliant with, is it
Hmm.
WCAG compliant?
Yeah, yeah, really
Um,
tough. Yeah,
we got halfway through the process and I then discovered that the logo that they had brought to
it
me
wasn't
was actually outside.
compliant.
Like it was
That's all good.
a client logo for a big company. And I'm
Wow.
like, okay, I have to go all the way back to the very
Yeah,
start.
yeah,
And so that's now something that I then take into my next logo job or my next creative job or my next brand job that I go, well, if we're going to be compliant, we need to be compliant from day one.
definitely. Contrast is a huge part. I know we're going into design talk now, but like go
Uh,
to color.adobe.com. There's a tool on there, a contrast checker. Stick your hex codes in the two things, and if they don't meet, just slide them up until they do, and then nick those colors and put them in your logo project. That's an easy win. But yeah, that the WCA compliance, you can get in trouble if you don't comply with those in a few countries, and I think the fines are pretty hefty. So you got to
yeah,
watch out for it.
this was a, let's go with organization that they needed to follow that sort of
Right. Wow.
interesting.
Yeah, not good. Not good. Well, glad
It,
they had you. Go back to the rebrand. That's another service you can sell to them.
look, I'm available.
There you go.
I wanted to kind of finish on today was I was actually having a little bit of a, you're on my screen now, but you've been on my screen almost all of yesterday going through your growing on TikTok course. Can you talk to me a
Hmm.
little? I know you mentioned in our chat, so like it was done a year ago, so little bits and pieces that may have changed or shifted, but
Hmm.
they seriously juicy stuff. And as someone who is a designer who sat there and gone, seriously, I am not someone who can do this. Uh, Definitely a 33-year-old millennial eldest daughter. I don't belong on TikTok. But this kind of changed it for me, shifted it for me. So I'd love for you to talk a bit about your course because it
Yeah.
was like the
Well,
hell ever.
if it makes you feel better, I'm 38 and I started like a couple of years ago on TikTok. And it's not all people dancing and lip syncing to music. There's a huge untapped resource in TikTok for business. And because the nature of like TikTok DMs, they're closed off, people have to kind of get in touch with you via other mediums, and that's like within the link in your bio that has to be set up and be juicy. So like you have to have all of your to have a website in there with a good sales funnel. You have to have a clear call to action. It's if people want your services via TikTok, you have to be basically set up for that. And I was lucky that I had a video go viral a couple of years ago, which made my account explode overnight. And I was so lucky that I put the work in beforehand to get that all set up. I had my links and my packages all set up on my website. I had a clear call to action, good sales funnel, and it meant that I got something like 70 leads in a single day for a logo project. And by the way, this was off the back of that listing my prices on my website debacle, where I'd gone 2 months without a single job. To suddenly get an influx of work like that and then be booked out for 3 months was just absolutely magical. So I was just like, wow, why was I not doing this beforehand? Getting on camera more, showing myself as the expert in my industry, so that it kind of lends that kind of credibility to my name when people actually get in touch with me for a logo project. And yeah, TikTok, it was the Designer Boss Summit, the last one where I got introduced to you. But that was my last talk, was how to win more clients with social media and TikTok, and it was all based around that getting that sales funnel sorted out. So when someone finds a good video, like here's how to make a good video, but also when they do, make sure that you've got everything set up so that they can get in touch with you in a nice way afterwards. And that's been the reason that I've actually managed to turn a social media platform into actual sales, into actual business for my clients, for my freelance operation. So yeah, I wouldn't make the social media content that I do if it didn't lead to
Yeah,
income, because it's just that it's too much of a time suck. But now it's something like half of my time is now devoted to social media, just because of the huge amount of clients it throws my way.
that's great. That's fantastic. If anyone who is watching was there for the Designer Boss Summit, hit that like button because we were both there. I'm hoping that you saw both of our talks. Mine was pricing from scratch, my 4-step foolproof method for pricing anything. So kind of going through that like first steps of pricing, and that's definitely something that I'm going to be bringing back in the next couple of months because I'm really looking forward to
Cool.
talk about that pricing from the very start and understanding what you need to serve. And so many times I see freelancers just go, oh, I'm just going to price whatever, and it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
can
Pluck it out in there. Yeah. Yeah. Big shout out to the Designer Boss Summit there. The next one's going to be, I think it's like later this year. But yeah, it's hugely like powerful little resource, that isn't it? There's so many great talks, all free. So yeah, definitely sign up to the next one if you haven't already.
Yeah, absolutely. And it brings together people like you and me. I will
Exactly.
say that I knew about you before the Designer Boss Summit, and then when I saw that we were both like on there, I was kind of like, okay, this is a good icebreaker. I could probably get, I know that I come across as quite a confident person, very willing to jump into someone's DMs and have a conversation. That's normal. But when it's someone like yourself, where I see you as, a literal logo legend, I kind of sit there and go,
Stop
you want to have a big,
it. Yeah,
but this is
absolutely.
and bring together people who are legends in their own corners of the internet. And I love it.
There we go. Well said. Well said. Yeah, and especially in today's world where we all work from home post-COVID, like I haven't met a single one of my clients in the last 2 years in person. So yeah, these kind of events and these little social gatherings are hugely important, especially as freelancers, because we're on our own most of the day, and it can be a bit of a drain on the old mental health. So yeah, it's important to keep these kind of communities alive and keep chatting, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, if you have enjoyed today's conversation, I highly recommend that you jump on. If you aren't already following my friend James here, definitely jump on and follow his amazing different like ways of explaining the process, because I feel like we've sat there and listened to lecturers tell us how a logo is made, but I feel like you bring a different flavor to the table and actually show the process behind it and why it matters as well, but you do it sitting alongside rather than teaching.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I've really enjoyed the way, like we used to sit next to other designers, and now we can't do that anymore. And I've discovered quite quickly people seem to respond to when you sort of just teach to them as like they're in the room with you, and then break down why doing something a certain way is important and why it will speed you up in your industry. I love that kind of side of things. I think I'm going to be a teacher when I retire. I'm going to go and work at a university somewhere and teach graphic design because I love it. Yeah.
Teaching isn't
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. For me, anyway.
you'll be one of those like old burly lecturers with a big long beard that just like waltzes in for 45 minutes and then waltzes out, and just
That's
like,
it.
I had
Mike drops knowledge and then leaves.
one. He spent a whole semester talking about Grecian columns, and we're like, why are we talking about this? Like, what's going on?
It's the passion project, isn't it? Yeah, I can totally get that. I bet I could do the same thing about logo design. I'll just like riff for an entire lecture. But yeah, definitely, I'm gonna go work at university when I've decided to pack all this in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, much for joining me. If they want to follow or get an extra slice of you said something about a newsletter.
Yeah. If you go to my website, barnard.co, and you sign up to the newsletter, that TikTok course we talked about, you can have the ebook for free. So that's if you just head to barnard.co, sign up for the newsletter, you can download that PDF and get it all for free.
What?
So there you go.
And if you are not someone who is following me, hi, I am your pricing queen. Jump on over to your pricing queen on Instagram. You can head to the bio and access as many different resources that are packed into the Creative Business Kitchen, including pricing calculators, including free mini guides. And I actually highly recommend my pricing calculator, which helps you work out your hourly rate that you are charging on your own personal rate. So if you head to creativebusinesskitchen.com/calculate, or slide into my DMs after this and just say calculate, and I'll send you the link straight away. Thank you so much, James, for kicking off this resurgence of the Slice of Advice. Have a great day.
Thank you, you too. It's been lovely to chat to you. See you later.
Loved it.
Bye. Thanks.